Welcome in. We are live with the 11th installment of this Razor Recap, your go-to destination for the latest updates on Arkansas baseball and softball action. Join us as we break down the thrilling moments, highlight standout performances, and discuss the strategies that shape the games. Razor Recap is brought to you by Scarlet Letter, Arkansas's very own handcrafted spiked seltzer. Check them out today if you're in Northwest Arkansas. Check out Core Brewery Tap Room, where you can get all the Scarlet Letters in their various flavors, along with the in-house brewed core beer. Go check them out today. Our fantastic partner sponsor that, we have some live events that we do. We got another one coming up May 18th. So mark your calendars for that. You can go check out our Facebook page and, find the event, all the details. You can mark going, interested, whatever, give us an idea of who all is going to be there. That'll be great. And we'll jump in before we hit baseball and softball, as we've got some more transfer portal updates for you guys regarding football and basketball. With football, you have two commits today. You had defensive lineman Danny Sale from BYU that committed. He brings some good defensive line depth for Arkansas this upcoming season. That's going to be much needed. I know they were looking at bringing in a few more guys on the defensive side of the ball, and this is a guy that has experience, played against Arkansas last year, probably the previous year as well, has been to Donald W. Reynolds Razorback Stadium, knows the environment and kind of what that expectations can be and what playing in Fayetteville will be like.
Yeah, I thought that was a big pickup. Just add some depth there in a spot that we kind of need it, frankly, with some of the pieces that we lost. Obviously, you've got Landon Jackson and a handful of others, but I think having a couple extra sets of legs in that position group is going to be beneficial, especially with somebody that's got, a decent amount of collegiate experience, even in SEC play, if you will, with playing us a couple of times. So that BYU team wasn't bad at all. So I think that's a good pickup. I don't know just a ton about him, but anxious to learn more about him kind of as we see more as fall practice and stuff begins.
Yeah. And then the other guy, Arkansas football was able to grab out of the portal today, was Caffrey Brown. He is a transfer wide receiver out of South Florida. He's coming in at 6 foot 195. He's kind of more of a speedy type wide receiver. Last season, he had 27 receptions for 435 yards and 5 touchdowns, averaging 16.1 yards per catch. So he's a guy that just brings added depth to, our receiving crew that we've already got here that, they've been here already. We returned all of our starters from last year. So that continuity is going to be there, but you always want more added depth. And, in case somebody goes down, you can have your next man up and still have some talented guys there. So it's going to be great to bring him in and see what he does in fall camp.
Yeah, and those are decent numbers of like a role player type wide receiver, if you will, with some upside that, like you said, depending on where playing time, kind of gets divvied around, depending on injuries and things like that, especially if we're trying to, get some guys some reps in some of the early games if we're up big or down big. Don't really want to look that way, but, it'll be nice to have some guys like that have shown promise at other schools. Get them in a rotation where, they may not be like the sole guy. There's several wide receivers that'll draw attention on our team where, some of these guys like him could get freed up and get some open looks pretty easily. And then having an accurate quarterback be able to lay that ball in there, on some cleanly run routes, that'll be a good thing. I've seen a little bit of stuff on him, nothing crazy. But like you said, it's just extra depth, which is never a bad thing to have, especially if you're bringing in guys that have collegiate experience, no matter what level it's at. So good pickup. Anxious to kind of see what he can add and what kind of competition level he can bring to that wide receiver room.
Yeah, that's very true. It's one of those things where you got to love what we're trying to do here. And like we said, with both these guys, it'll be interested to see what fall camp looks like. And with some of these other guys coming in, we got a running back commit just over the weekend, JUCO guy coming in. So you're going to have a few new faces coming in trying to compete for some depth roles, that type of thing, because these guys most likely won't be key contributors. They could surprise us, but, I think for the most part, we know who our guys are going to be, especially when you look at the running back room. We've said this time and time again. You're going to have Rashad Dabinion, Jaquindon Jackson, and Braylon Russell. You're going to be your three main guys that you're going to go to. And then you look at your receiver roles, you're going to have Andrew Armstrong, Luke Haas is coming back. You've got Ty Washington. Several other guys that are coming back that, these other guys are going to have to fight with to get playing time. Not to mention Tyrone Broden coming back as well. He's a big-bodied 6'7" receiver that, if utilized properly, could be a big end zone target for this Arkansas offense this fall.
Yeah, and you've got Dozier, I think that's how you pronounce his name, who's been touted as a pretty solid target so far. Did you mention Tesla?
Tesla's coming back as well.
I mean, there's a lot of names that have a lot of potential. Guys that really actually stood out last year, even considering how up and down our offense was. So I think there's a lot of firepower in this wide receiver room, that depending on how much time Talon has and how accurate he can be, and if he can extend plays and these guys can kind of get in sync with him to flash open on some of those extended plays, you have to have that in the SEC. You're not going to be able to, throw from the pocket every single play. There's going to be some pressure. You got to just be able to avoid that and see what, type of plays you can make. Luke Haas looked like he was really turning into that guy last year for KJ. So if he stays healthy, the sky's the limit on what he can be for Talon. And then you sprinkle in all these other guys around him, with Tesla kind of being another similar show you the numbers and throw it my way and I'll make a grab. I've got ridiculous range on what I can catch. So there's just a handful of guys right there outside of some of the other ones we've mentioned that really have a lot of upside, that can bring the heat and have some big bodies that can kind of have those box out type plays on the sideline or in the end zone. So it's going to be really fun to kind of see how this offense evolves. I don't think what you see on day one is what you're going to see midway through the season. I think these guys, there's so many fresh faces and fresh coaching faces, new schemes and things, that they're learning so much. It's like drinking from a fire hose. There's still going to be things that are being implemented into the game plan probably as late as like week 8 to week 10, so it'll be an ever evolving thing. And I think that's going to be half of the fun part about this upcoming season, is kind of watching that ride. And I'm hoping and kind of have it in my mind that we'll get a pretty good taste of, what might be to come in consecutive couple of years or so by the end of the season. I'm hoping, everybody that is going to stick around for maybe a couple of years has learned, most of the Petrino offense and on all those things, and is able to execute at least, halfway on a lot of that. And we have a pretty good taste of, where this program might be heading. Heck, it may happen sooner than I'm thinking, and we might, squeak out 7, 8, 9 wins or something this year. I don't know if that's needing to be the expectation. We've talked, about this till we're blue in the face, but the thing that I want to see is just that continuous development of kind of evolving the game plan, growing the offense, and, the defense as well. That's going to what makes this season fun. Even if there's not just a ton of wins, you got to win some games. Don't get me wrong. You got to win some games. But you need to be realistic, I think, with, what this team's trying to do and the trajectory they're trying to get back on.
Yeah, 100% there. And then as we jump from the gridiron to the hardwood, Arkansas got another big commitment for Coach Cal today, as former Kentucky forward Adu Thiero has committed to Coach Cal and Arkansas. So another Kentucky guy coming over. He's a guy he's a 6'8" sophomore that averaged 7.2 points and 5 rebounds per game last season. And he's a guy that a lot of people are speculating that he comes back and develops under Coach Cal, could be a high first-round pick next year. So that talent is there. This roster keeps ever evolving, and, this puts Arkansas ranked as the #1 overall transfer class, and I think like #3 overall recruiting class for incoming freshmen. So Cal keeps doing his things, and this roster keeps looking better and better, as, these weeks keep going.
Yeah, and I think that pickup right there really gets you like a solid 6 or so right now on this team. You've got to pick up, 2, 3 more guys that you can really sprinkle into the rotation for considerable minutes. But right now, depending on kind of how everybody, meshes together, you've got a pretty good starting unit. With, potentially another 6th man, to be able to rotate in. You need a handful more, no doubt about it. But right now, I feel like we've hit several home runs on some of the guys that we've got from a talent perspective. You can go out and just kind of fill the roster with some solid role players, really, really high-end defensive type players, maybe Audie's Tony type of players, if you will. that can come in and just give you a ton of effort on the defense and on rebounding and then flash for some points every now and then, especially in transition. Those are the kind of players you kind of got to go get right now in my mind. Who knows who else he's able to bring along? There could be another couple of big name commitments coming our way. It's Coach Cal, and you never know what's going to happen. But as of right now, I feel like there's quite a bit of star power on this team, or at least potential star power, especially with a couple of transfers. Through. I mean, he was dang near a star at Kentucky with a lot of upside, and then you got Big Z, who's kind of the same way. Didn't get enough playing time over there just due to some issues, but he had that upside that he could be kind of that next SEC big man star that you see from time to time roll through the SEC. So there's a lot of potential. It's all going to be up to the coaching staff on how well they're able to get these guys to click. And like I said, you got to go grab another few guys to kind of get this roster rounded out. But in my mind, we've got a pretty decent starting look right now, I think.
Yeah, there's still some time out there for Coach Cal to go grab some more depth bench guys that you want to see. We were talking about like he brings in this guy and you've got a good solid rotation right now. And I'm interested to see with what he fills in. Like you said, get a couple of those guys that are going to be high effort, high energy guys that can come in and, give you a few minutes when you need to give your starters a break type role. And so it's going to be interesting to see. There's still a few names out there that are, being circled. One name is former Kentucky player DJ Wagner. He's yet to commit anywhere yet. It was said that he was between Arkansas and USC. But there hasn't really been any more development as far as what I've heard. And then, it's just a handful of other guys out there that are kind of some bigger names that Arkansas is going after that, we're still waiting to hear on, and some ironic news, not Arkansas related. I saw where Big Z's brother actually committed to play for Illinois. He's a 7-1 center. So, that seems like a basketball family there. So he's coming over to play at Illinois. So, if we ever match up with him, you might see some a family
Giants
affair there. Yeah. So as far as other news, Arkansas players that we've kind of been wondering what's the plan for them. Well, we started learning that as over the weekend you had Khalif Battle commit to Gonzaga. So he's headed out west to play for the Zags, a team that has a lot of history, a lot of tournament runs. A team that's known to score. So, he'll probably fit in out there. Wish him the best luck. And then you have Devo Davis that he is committed to Oklahoma State. It said that was privately committed earlier, probably a few weeks ago. And now he's kind of like put that out to the public. And that is the school. If you got to take notice and you remember, that was the school that he was previously committed to before he got that offer from Arkansas and decided to flip and play for the Hogs. So he is headed to a school that he is familiar with. It kind of recruited him out of high school, probably some of the same staff still there. And then Layden Blocker, a guy that you really kind of hoped Cal would bring back, a guy that seemed to have a lot of upside, home state kid that you really wanted to see have success here, decided to commit to DePaul. So he is headed to play up at DePaul. And then other than that, I think that's most of the Arkansas roster guys that left because you had Tremont Mark that committed to Texas. You had Bayfall that committed to Kansas State. Joseph Pinion went to Arkansas State. So, most of your Arkansas roster that decided to transfer has really made their commits, and then everybody else was out of eligibility. But, with that being said, what we were just talking about, I'm confident in what Coach Cal's doing, and I'm ready to see who else he adds onto this already talented roster. If it keeps going at this rate, there's going to be insane expectations for Arkansas going into the season and that way too early top 25 and all those type of things with, brand new coach, brand new roster at every position essentially. So, it's going to be interesting to see what that storyline looks like as we get into summer, kids getting here, getting on campus, they start practicing. And then as fall gets here and, we start hearing more about, upcoming scrimmages and what kind of things that Coach Cal is going to do as they prep for the season.
Yeah, it's an exciting time and kind of a nerve-wracking time in a way because the national attention that we've garnished it almost feels like year one is a make or break year, even though it's not. But the national attention that we've gotten, it almost, there's going to be so many scrutinizing eyes that if you come out and don't have a fairly decent season, potential postseason run, things like that, it's going to be a letdown for so many people, because I think the expectations have really ballooned with how much, national attention and hype this entire offseason, crazy storylines left and right, players coming in that we never thought we'd get, all this, craziness. It adds to a lot of that. I hope everybody is at least somewhat realistic on what their first year expectations are going to be, because there's a lot of implementation that's got to go on from Cal to all these players. It helps that he knows a couple of them, that are coming over from Kentucky, as well as some commits that are, have flipped now. So at least he's got a lot of history with some of these kids, but it's still going to be a major adjustment for literally everybody involved. So sky's the limit, but who knows how far we'll get off the ground. You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's very true. There's going to be a lot of expectations, but we got to remember it's year one. It's an entirely new roster. And so we'll see how much magic Cal works in getting these guys, playing together, and, what that looks like, and, how his teams are going to be compared to what we've been used to in the Musselman era. And as you talk about national attention, Arkansas had a big matchup this weekend in the baseball world where they went on the road to face number 8 Kentucky, and it was a matchup that, had a lot of implications on it. Yeah. And unfortunately, Arkansas loses the series. Not the worst thing in the world. It is, they're on the road at a top 10 ranked school. So, at the end of the day, you hate to see them lose the series, but, I think as long as they can bounce back and, win Mississippi State this weekend, go on the road and maybe win the series at Texas A&M, I think you'll be fine. Arkansas jumps out in game 1 here and wins 10-3. So, it's almost like looking back at it after you see the other 2 games of the series. Arkansas used all their juice in this first game and didn't save anything else for the rest. Hagen Smith was his normal self, came out, gave you 6 innings, 101 pitches, 3 hits, 1 run, 2 walks, and 14 strikeouts. So he was close to that level of a game he had down in Dallas against Oregon State. So it's one of those where he's coming out and just lighting it up.
Yeah, I thought this was probably his closest performance to that. The 3 hits and the 1 run, I think the 1 run came off of one of the walks that it ended up coming around. If that hadn't happened, it wouldn't have ended up being a run. But overall, dude, I mean, you can't ask for a better game than that, man. You literally cannot ask for a better game from your ace, if you will. And it just seems like he's gotten better and better and better as the seasons went on, which is a little surprising considering the trend that a lot of the rest of our pitchers have kind of been on, where there's a lot of film on everybody now and kind of what their pitching tendencies are, what they like to throw. I think that's one of the major reasons why Will McIntyre and Brady Tiger are getting hit a lot more than they were earlier in the year. Granted, you're facing better opponents, but also everybody knows that, hey, you're throwing 90% off-speed cutters or, sliders or curves or whatever, depending on which pitcher we're talking about here with, McIntyre throwing literally like 85% cutters. Everybody knows that's coming now. They're not looking fastball ever. And so everybody's hitting McIntyre quite a bit more than they were earlier in the year. So for Hagen Smith to kind of be the exception to that rule so far throughout the season, I think it really just is a testament to how good his stuff is, how well he's able to balance his approach to certain batters. I mean, he'll go up there and throw 3-4 straight fastballs on somebody that's not expecting that at all, and then come right back on the next guy and throw 2 or 3 of his big time sweeping balls, and then bust a couple fastballs underneath somebody's hands. It's just what he's able to do, and his accuracy. It makes him almost unhittable, and you're seeing that in his stats week in and week out. His ability to pitch, positioning, he doesn't miss his spots hardly at all. Very few walks. That's kind of a testament to that. It's been really, really fun to watch him this year, man. It's every single game he's been out there outside of game 1, way on back, has just been like absolutely must see TV.
Agreed. I watched a little clip today of, Van Horn speaking at the Swatters Club, and he came out and he said, Hagen Smith's one of those guys that they only come around every so often, and he's a guy that he said, stayed here over the summer, was very upset at how last season ended, with, TCU coming to Fayetteville and knocking us out of our own regional. That didn't sit well with him, and he said he really worked hard all off season to get to where he is today, and he said, he's one of those players that doesn't come along that often, and you're getting to see something really special, and then, he's pitched himself into easily not only a first round pick, but top 10, top 5 pick easily. And, he's going to only continue to add to that as the rest of the season goes and as we go into pushing towards a postseason run. And, another guy you were just talking about, Will McIntyre, he came out in this first game and didn't have a bad outing here. Came out two innings, 39 pitches, only allowing 1 hit, 1 walk, 3 strikeouts. So kind of finding his groove back a little bit. And you had Dylan Carter come in and close things out in the final inning, going 27 pitches, allowing 1 hit, 2 runs, 2 walks, and 1 strikeout. So glad to see him getting more innings underneath him as we're kind of, I guess, still ramping him up in a sense and figuring out what his role is going to be. Kind of, is it going to be a long relief, a closing type role? But overall, in this first game, outstanding pitching. Hagen comes in and does his 6th inning, 100 pitches, which is getting about his norm now. And then you finish things off with not having to use too many other pitchers. And then offensively, Stovall started things off in this game in the 5th, where he got a ground rule double to get things started 1-1 in the 5th. Then you have Diggs. He's had that. We talked about it. It's one of those things. How much time do you give him until he works himself out of it? Well, he finally found out and figured out what he was doing and had a 1-out double in the 6th that brought 2 runs home for Arkansas and put Arkansas up 3-1. So he's really, I think this was a big series for Diggs as he was really getting back to what we know he can do and be able to hit the ball well. And then you had Ross Lovich pinch hit and produce a 2-out RBI double as well to put the Hogs up 4-1. And then Arkansas would go on to score 6 more runs in the 7th with 2 outs. It seems like we'd like to do a lot of our scoring with 2 outs here. And then so Diggs would score another pair of runs on a single to center. So Diggs finished the day 2 for 4 with a double and 4 RBIs. So you got to love a bounce back game like that, kind of getting out of that funk you're in and getting back to what, you've done that entire first half of the season. And then you had Peyton Stovall continue to do his thing, 2 for 5, a double and 2 RBIs here. So Arkansas gets the win 10-3 in an opening game, which really made you hopeful. And then the next 2 games happen and kind of really deflating and made you really wonder, like they're just some weird games.
Yeah, it was a little funky. We hit the ball well in this first game. We definitely took advantage of some walks. I think they walked in 2 runs for us, which was helpful. Granted, we were already up big at the time that those happened whenever we got bases loaded and they walked a couple in. That said, being up big like we were, it gave Dylan Carter an opportunity to really kind of go out there and fight through a few issues in that inning that he was out there and go ahead and get the win. I thought he fought through it quite well, considering, he gave up the 1 hit for the 2 runs, but he had the 2 walks that ended up being those 2 runs. All in all, though, I was glad to see them let him stay out there a little while and kind of fight through that since we had the big lead. So that was one of the highlights to me in this game of somebody that was able to, get a little bit of extra work more than they would have if it was a tighter game, obviously. Outside of that, Stovall's been so hot the last, golly, I can't even think to back. I mean, golly, whenever he started playing back in the beginning of the SEC schedule, he's been, kind of come right out the gate and hadn't slowed down. So he's really kind of been carrying the team on his back, where some of these other guys have been a little streakier outside of maybe Vahiva Aloy. Ben McLaughlin's kind of petered off a little bit, which he needs to kind of get things ramped back up. It was nice to see Diggs have this good game here. Granted, it didn't necessarily carry over into the other 2 games, unfortunately. Spraglot, who's been pretty hot, kind of cooled off a little bit in this series as well. Hudson White looked a little bit better in this series, but we need to find a way to kind of get 5, 6, 7 guys that are all hitting pretty well at the same time. We've got the guys that can do it. I can sit here and name them. Once Sousa's, fully healthy too, that'll help as well. But if Stovall's been hot. If you can get Kendall Diggs going again, keep Vahiva pretty hot. Got to get McLaughlin going. Hudson White, keep him going. Peyton Holt's been playing quite well. There's 6 guys right there, and I may be missing 1 or 2. But if all those guys can really kind of get things ramped up at the right time here in the latter part of the season, even though we lost games 2 and 3, and we can cover a little bit of that in a minute, this team's really got potential about 1 through 7, 1 through 8 to have a lot of offensive firepower. It's just got to get meshed together at the right time where, at one point in the season, McLaughlin was just leading the team in batting average and on base percentage and all that. He's still up there in on base percentage, but he's had a rough couple of weekends from a batting average perspective, and got to bounce back out of that, or it's going to make for a long postseason. You got a couple other names that are kind of doing the same thing right now. So, don't want to go down that rabbit hole too much further, but you got to have some bounce back and some consistency across the entire lineup if you have any expectations to make it past some of these higher tier teams, which you're going to face if you make it out of your regionals. Super regionals is going to be against somebody like a Kentucky. LSU is definitely going to be one of those teams that's probably not going to host, which makes them extremely dangerous, considering they'll probably make it out of a regional and go somewhere and absolutely wreck somebody's world with how hot they've been hitting the ball. So, a team like that, you're really going to have to bring the heat, from multiple players, not just 1 or 2.
Yeah, that's so true. And it's like we said here, in this game too, you look at it, it's almost like the script was flipped in this one as Kentucky came out and beat us 11-3. And it's like we mentioned, Brady Tigert did not have probably one of his worst outings of the season so far, only being able to go 3 innings, 66 pitches. He allowed 6 hits, 5 runs, 3 walks, and only 2 strikeouts. And we know he's a guy that has, one of those ace type potentials that, he can get up there and have some great performances. And, it's like you said, the film's out there now and guys are kind of honing in on what they like to throw, the majority of what they throw. And, this was a game where they were just ready for Brady and what he
throws too many breaking balls. I just can't help but think that everybody knew that's what was coming and was waiting on him, sitting on him, and just cranking them.
Yeah, we need to get back to, I think, him throwing that fastball more, because you saw him his freshman year. He came out here and he was just pumping the gas like crazy and just getting guys out when he was in that closer type role. And I know you can't do that all the time if you're in a starting role, because you want to extend your innings, but you
got to get outs though.
Yeah, you got to get those outs, whether that be strikeouts or even pop-ups, just to get guys, putting the ball in play and, giving your defense behind you a chance. And then you had Gage Wood. I think he had, even though he allowed some runs scored, I think, he had a great performance in this game in that long relief type role. And he set Arkansas up from a pitching staff point to be able to have success if they would have executed on Sunday in the game 3, because he came in and gave Arkansas 4 1/3, 79 pitches, 3 hits, 3 runs, 2 walks, and 6 strikeouts. So not a terrible line. You hate to see 3 runs scored, but at the end of the day, it's a good long relief outing for Gage Wood. And then Cody Frank came in the final 2/3, 27 pitches, 2 hits, 3 runs, 1 walk, 1 strikeout. So at the end of the day, this is one that they just really needed to flush and, kind of get back to what Arkansas does and the pitching staff that we had. And in this game, when you look at it offensively, the way Arkansas started it, you thought that this game would have ended differently. Hudson White comes out in the second inning and hits his second home run of the season with a 2-run shot. And, Arkansas's up 2-0 right there. And then you had Stovall go 2 for 5 in this game, an RBI, hitting a team leading now 354, 421, 558. And Hudson White going 1 for 3 on the day with 2 runs scored, 2 RBIs, a walk, and that home run. So, with the way things started with Hudson White coming out hitting that home run, you're like, okay, Arkansas might be coming out ready to kind of clinch the series here, but that was not the case.
Yeah, when that first happened, I was like, all right, maybe these bats will stay hot. You're going to have a couple of guys that hadn't been hitting as well. Maybe they'll hit well in this one. I was hoping Diggs would keep hitting well, continuing what he did in game 1. Hudson White obviously had a pretty good game in this one, and I thought that was the standout performance, with Stovall doing his thing as well. So if you'd have had 1 or 2 more other guys be able to kind of hit a little bit better when we had runners in scoring position, it would have been a closer game. Granted, our pitching let us down on this one. I mean, that's just all there is to it. So, You've got a lot of people out there that said, pitching wins championships, and that is true. But on those days when your pitching isn't quite what it normally is, you have to be able to score runs. I mean, say you had this game when you're at Omaha, this puts you in a real bad spot, especially if it was like an elimination game. You just come out and your pitching falls completely apart and you don't have enough run support to even keep you in it close. I mean, you really do have to have both facets of the game to be able to be successful deep into the postseason. So definitely, we can talk about game 3 in a minute too, but both these 2 losses, for this to be a lost series, they're good learning experiences on stuff that we've really got to improve on. The bad part is it's kind of been the same MO on the stuff we've been preaching all season long on the things we've got to improve on. So I'm getting a little bit more skeptical on how much we're actually going to be able to make those adjustments, make those incremental improvements from a approach at the plate, things like that. I'm a little bit worried about that at this point. I'm not panicked or anything like that at all, because I still think we've got potential to win a ton of games. But I'm a little bit more concerned about where this offense has developed to at this point, more so than I was, back at the beginning of the SEC schedule and whatnot. And we thought, okay, if we keep developing kind of how it's been the case in previous Van Horn years, where everybody starts kind of getting their feet underneath them later in the SEC season, and we've made really great SEC tournament runs at Hoover. You think back to like Jalen Battles getting fiery hot in the SEC tournament to help us win the dang thing a couple years back. That's kind of where I was hoping this team would go. We're not there yet. We're definitely not there yet. So can we get there? For sure. It's just going to happen. It's going to have to happen pretty quick, though.
Yeah, that's true. I saw a stat today that said, Arkansas's definitely got to improve, because right now in SEC play, they're hitting 194. You've got to hit high 200s into the threes.
You got to be 250 plus.
Yeah.
100%.
I mean, this weekend almost said to step up. If we could have won the series, A&M lost the series to LSU. So if you win this series,
you're number 1.
You're number 1 in the country, but also you're sitting with the number 1 in the SEC, and almost prime for a regular season championship. But you lose this series, A&M drops, so now Kentucky is sitting solely in that first place in the conference right now. And the polls came out today at Arkansas dropped a little bit more than I thought we would for just a top 10 loss. Don't necessarily agree with what they have us ranked and everything, but what can you do? You got to just not worry about that ranking and just play your game. Like we said, there's more issues to worry about than what we're ranked. You got to come back out and finish your home slate on a positive note this weekend as Mississippi State comes to town, and then you've got a big series that I feel like there's almost more importance on that A&M series now compared to if we would have won this Kentucky series. It's going to be a tough series, but you really need to win that series now.
Yeah, no doubt about it. I will say this: we're number 5 right now in the D1 poll. We're number 3, 4 in a couple other polls. Number 5 in a couple. I mean, there's 5 or 6 baseball polls out there that everybody kind of takes into consideration, where we're 3 through 5 in most of those. I agree with being number 5. Honestly, the teams that are ahead of us right now. You look at Tennessee, who's gotten extremely hot. They just beat Kentucky a couple weekends ago, pretty handily, honestly, and they've had some really good weekend series this latter half of the SEC season. They've got pretty explosive offense and some good pitching behind it as well. So I agree with them being number 1 right now, considering everybody else that's lost. I think A&M's number 3, Kentucky's number 4, and you got Clemson that worked their way back up to number 2, and us at 5. And to me, I kind of agree with that top 5. That said, I do think we really need to, if we can find a way to sweep Mississippi State, that gives you that extra buffer game to potentially lose the series to A&M. You don't want to do that. You definitely don't want to get swept at A&M. I don't think we will. I think with Hagan pitching how he has, as long as he goes out and does his thing, and we get enough offense of output in game 1, I think we got a great chance to kind of do exactly what we did against Kentucky, if you will. But you really kind of need to take advantage and definitely win the series, potentially sweep if you can at home against Mississippi State to give you a tiny little bit of buffer, to where if you do lose to A&M, say 2 out of the 3, I still think we'll be in the top 8 and be a national seed. I do think that. We talked about it a week or so back that you could potentially lose the Kentucky series and the A&M series as long as you didn't get swept in either one. As long as you beat Mississippi State pretty well, still be a top 8 seed. And I think the way the rest of the country records and schedules have kind of shaped out, I think that's still possible. Granted, you don't want to kind of leave it up to being that number 8, number 9, kind of on the bubble type thing. And that would not be a fun feeling at all. So if we can find a way to win these next 2 series, that would be best case scenario for sure.
Yeah, that's so true. And we'll quickly cover this game through here. Arkansas loses 7-4, so a little bit closer than game 2 was. Molina comes back out after a weekend off, kind of recovering. He didn't pitch last weekend due to that ankle. He comes back, and he doesn't have a great outing either. It's like we talked about. Other than Hagan, your 2 other starters kind of just they didn't bring their A game. And, he goes 3 innings as well, 67 pitches, 3 hits, 3 runs, 3 walks, 3 strikeouts. So, one of his probably, I'm not going to say worst, but not his greatest outing for Arkansas. And then you have Will McIntyre come in for only 2/3 of an inning. 14 pitches is all he had, and he gave up 3 hits, 3 runs. So, we thought he was kind of getting past that in that game 1. And, it's like we said.
Predictable, man, I swear.
Yeah, that film's out there, and people know what he's going to come out there and throw. You had Christian Fouch come out and give you an inning and a third. I like to see the extended relief from him. He's a guy that hadn't had a ton of opportunities this year in a small sample size. Came out 18 pitches, 1 hit, 1 strikeout. And then Gabe Geckel, who else other than, your key closer that you use in key situations, 3 innings, 39 pitches, 2 hits, 1 run. He really limited the damage to those final 3 innings as we were trying to fight back here in a close 3-run loss. Arkansas did not hit well, though, in this game. We talked about that was the story of the weekend after game 1. Our bats kind of just disappeared. Arkansas didn't have a hit through the first 4 innings of the game. Top of the 5th, Hudson White had Arkansas's first base hit of the day. Vahiva Loy had a 1-out single to score White from second, followed by Sprague the sac fly that scored Stovall on it. That cut the lead to 4, and then Stovall would score again off of Kendall Diggs' 2-out single, but cut the lead to 3. But that was as close as we could get here. Late in the game, I really thought we were going to have a chance to fight back there. If I remember, I thought we got close to a bases loaded situation there late in the game that, could have been big, but turns out, we did the thing that we've done all weekend is runners in scoring position. We seem to just
hit into a double play.
Yep. And that's one thing, nothing against the guy in this game where it was the rubber match, for the series. And I don't want to question Dave, but I was really thrown off with seeing Parker Rowland in that designated hitting role. Myself, I would have put somebody else up there that, has maybe a little bit better of a bat, maybe a Souza or somebody like that, or even, I don't know. It's one of those things where
Wagner, I don't know.
Yeah.
Jason Jones. I mean, I really don't know.
Right. Give somebody an opportunity because, we know Parker Rowland, we saw him last year. He was our main catcher last year. He's got a decent bat, but to me, in a close game situation like that, that's not the time to, start a guy that, hits mid to low 200s when it's a big situation. I think for me, the epitome of that was, I forgot at what point it was, he hit straight into a double play in a key situation. And I was just like, yep, that's our designated hitter right there. So, hopefully, maybe Dave saw what he did in the midweek games and saw something he liked or was just trying to switch it up. I don't know, but I'm not the coach, you're not the coach, and that we're probably that way for the reason. So,
yeah, you do got to give Rollins some credit because he had I think he had hit 2 doubles in the last game he'd played in and shown that maybe he should get a little bit more playing time, but you face a little bit better pitching competition and couldn't get the job done. I hate it for him, there's very, very likely you throw another couple of those guys we just named out there and they do the same thing and hit into a double play or whatever. I will say this. I think, Jason Jones has got a lot of potential to be a pretty decent DH just due to the fact that he hits the ball 110, 115 miles an hour. Yeah, it may be right at somebody. But you're going to have to force somebody to make a tough play when the ball's hit that hard, on like a hard line or a hard ground or something like that. And then he does have, legitimate home run power. And that's something that Parker Rowland does not have. So to me, in that situation where I think you had runners on first and second. Yeah, you're wanting Rowland to get up there and get you a base knock. But at the same time, at that point in the game, you're needing to score some runs in bunches. And maybe throw a bigger bat out there. But like you said, maybe Van Horn saw something, especially in batting practice that day or something. You never know. And Rowland had looked well. I mean, it's not like he'd been just horrible or anything like that in the appearances that he's gotten. So a lot of respect for him to go out there and do his best. It just is unfortunate that some of the timely hitting that we needed, it was the exact opposite of that.
Yeah, that's true. And so Arkansas, like we said, no midweek games this week. We finished those up. So, we got to wait till the weekend before any more Arkansas baseball. Is like we said, Arkansas will be taking on Mississippi State this weekend for the final home series of the season. And then they will hit the road for the final regular season series at A&M. As we flip the script here, you jump over to Arkansas softball. They had their last regular season games this weekend at home. Last weekend at home in the regular season at Bogle. We previewed that, into last week. Ole Miss coming to town. Well, they changed some games. You had a doubleheader on Friday. Ole Miss comes out game one. Arkansas loses 6-0, which was, I think, took me by surprise. You had Morgan Leanstock come out, go 5 innings, 6 hits, 4 runs, 2 walks, and 6 strikeouts in the circle. You had Robin Herring come in for an inning and get 1 strikeout, and then Hannah Camden finish off that last inning with 2 hits, 2 runs, 1 walk. Arkansas just out hit 8-3 in this game, had 2 errors. That's what, was the story of the game for this one.
Yeah, no doubt. It was kind of a funky one considering, we had some of our best pitching out there, just couldn't get the job done against the Ole Miss team that, they're not bad at all, but it's not like they're a powerhouse Georgia type team or something like that we had pretty good success on earlier in the year. So maybe we were kind of overlooking this Ole Miss series in a way. I think that might have been the case. Maybe not. I don't know. Softball is a funky game, just like baseball can be, where one team can get real hot out of nowhere. So tough loss to kind of start the series. It didn't necessarily set the tone, but kind of in a way made the rest of the weekend feel hard, if that makes any kind of sense. But they definitely did a good job bouncing back in game 2. I'll let you cover that.
Yeah, game 2 was a complete flip of the script there, where Arkansas came out and wins this game 12-2 in 5 innings. So run rule game here. Robin Herring comes out, throws 5 innings, 2 hits, 2 runs, and 6 strikeouts. Arkansas had 12 runs on 9 hits, and they put up 9 runs in the first inning and 3 in the second. So they scored early and often. In this one, you had designated player Riley Cloud hit her first career home run of the season, and it came off a 3-run shot with and she had a career high 3 RBIs as well in this game. And like we said, Arkansas started things off very nicely in this game, as you had walks of Johnson and Ellis. Nia Carter had her first base hit. Hannah Gamble would come in and break the game open with a 1-out bases loaded single that scored 1. Kennedy Miller would come up and score another with a sac fly. Hannah Camden would add an RBI single. And then that's when Riley Cloud came in and hit her 3-run home run to make it 6-0. And, as we said, they'd put up 3 more runs in the first, 3 more in the second. And, Ole Miss would score a couple, but they couldn't keep up with us in this game. And Arkansas gets the win here to tie up the series 1-1.
Yeah, big game here. And they tried to carry this into game 3. We can talk a little bit about that in a minute, because it was a tight one that could have kind of went either way. And so that's really all you can ask for, to have this type of bounce back after the ugly game 1. Come back out, absolutely have the pedal to the metal, get things going early, and kind of put the game out of reach, within the second inning, which is not always that's not an easy thing to do. So that was very exciting to see. A lot of offensive scored. There were some mistakes that Ole Miss made to put us in position to score that many runs, with several walks and things of that nature. So I just was proud of how we took advantage of all that, and were able to really bring a lot of those base runners across to score. So that put us in a good position. And then, like I said, we come out in game 3. It's a tight game that unfortunately doesn't go our way. But you were in position to take this series. That's kind of all you can ask for in these conference matchups like this, whether it's baseball or softball, especially if you split games 1 and 2. If that third game's pretty close, you did your best and that you had an opportunity to win it. And sometimes the ball just doesn't bounce quite your way on a few hits. And that's kind of what happened here.
Yeah. As we jump over to game 3, Arkansas fell 4-3 in this one. It's a close one. Reese Berlin got the start in the circle here. 4 innings, 4 hits, 2 runs. Morgan Leanstock, 2 innings, 2 hits, 2 runs, 1 walk, 2 strikeouts. And then Robert Heron finishes off with the final 2 innings, 1 hit, 3 strikeouts there. Ole Miss would strike first. This one scored 2 in the first, and Arkansas would respond, but really could never get close there. And they dropped the series here on the road, at home, right before SEC tournament here. And then Arkansas ends the season and they go into the SEC tournament as the 4 seed, and they will end up playing. If you look at the bracket over here, they will play the winner of, so you have the playing game, Kentucky and Ole Miss play. The winner of that will play Ole Miss or Missouri, and then Arkansas will play the winner of Missouri and either Kentucky or Ole Miss. So we won't play till Thursday, May 9th. It'll be game 7, so it'll be first game's at 10 o'clock. Whenever that game's over, 35 minutes after that game is when Arkansas will play. And, then we'll have to see what happens as far as regionals go. And will we host? Will we be a top national seed, just like we were talking about with baseball? Will we be one of those teams that can be up there towards the top?
Yeah, and I think a little bit of that depends on how well we are able to execute in the SEC tournament. We've set ourselves up well. We had a great year. And we've set ourselves up well to have a pretty good SEC tournament run, which can bleed into a potentially good postseason run in regionals and supers and all that. So, if we can replicate some of the offensive explosiveness that we had in game 2, that could bode well for us. You got to have a little bit more, consistency in the circle. Excuse me. I think to have as deep of a run as we should. So getting a little bit more consistency out of Leanstock, Robin Heron, Reese Berlin, and then Hannah Cammons, and those are really your big 4 names right there that you can do a lot of damage with those 4. If one of them's not hot, throw a different one in there, and it's worked out for us in some games. Unfortunately, a couple of these it didn't quite pan out the way we wanted it to. But for example, in game 3 here, Robin Heron comes out, throws 2 scoreless innings with 3 strikeouts across those 2. That gives us a great opportunity to have won that game. Just the hits didn't come at the right time. That happens. So if you can find a way to maybe squeak some of those hits out just a little bit more, have a little bit more offensive firepower in the postseason, we've got a great team to really have a lot of good things go our way late in the season, where we can put a lot of pressure on teams, especially if they walk us. You've got power up and down this lineup that you get a couple of free base runners, it is dangerous for the other team, especially if there's 0 or 1 outs or something like that. Anybody can hit a good sac fly. Anybody can hit it out of the park. So there's always a potential to score runs whenever we get some free base runners. So being able to do that, be patient at the plate, get a couple of walks, and then have somebody come in and knock them around, that's going to be the key to success, mixed with some more consistent pitching. And I think this team is primed to do that. And similar to what we just discussed around baseball, it's not necessarily the worst thing to lose this series right here before you go into postseason play. Get you a little bit pissed off, get you a little bit fired up. You could have played a little bit better in a couple of these games and scored a few more runs. You left a little bit of meat on the bone, if you will, and this easily could have been a 1 series for us. So you take that motivation, if you will, carry that into the SEC tournament, especially if somehow Ole Miss is able to kind of work their way through and have a matchup with us in that game 7. That would be awesome. Hopefully we beat the brakes off of them, kind of thing. So definitely need to use this time off to get, motivated, stay fiery from this loss, if you will, and utilize the SEC tournament to maybe bolster our standings from a national seed standpoint. So a lot of big things still left out there for this softball team to be able to happen during postseason play for sure.
Couldn't have said it better. So as we wrap up here, like we mentioned, Arkansas softball ends the regular season on a loss, but they have a chance to turn around, do some damage in the SEC tournament, and then figure out what's the plan for SC or tournament play. Are we going to host? Or what's that type of situation? So a lot of work that can still be done there, and they're not in the worst position. But you'd like to see them, make a run in the SEC tournament. Help increase their chances at being one of those top national seeds. And that was just said, baseball has Mississippi State coming to town this weekend, where it's a big series that, if you, like Seth said earlier, you really want to see them sweep, to bounce back from a weekend that, was a tough game. We seem to traditionally, I think that's most teams, hit better at home. It's your own ballpark. You're more comfortable, that type of thing. So hopefully they have a big bounce back weekend. And before we get out of here, again, May 18th, put that on your calendar, 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. at Core Brewing will be our next live show. We're going to be talking some Arkansas baseball, as that's going to be the day of the final game of the Texas A&M series. So, that'll be fun. And so just come out there. If you didn't get the chance to be there for our first one, come out again. It's going to be a great time. We had a great turnout last time. Surely we will again. Great drinks. Come support local businesses. Local show for us. Anything you want to add there, Seth?
No, it's going to be an exciting time. Last time was a blast. Obviously, have a little bit of a name change that came out of last time. So y'all come out, come support the new name, new logos, all that kind of cool stuff. Might have some newly branded merch by then. We'll see. But if nothing else, come out and support Core and the Scarlet Letter brand. They've got some great drinks there outside of just seltzers. Come give them a shot. They're phenomenal, especially some of the lagers and stuff that they have on tap there. They make some dang good beer. So if that's your speed, come out there, come hang out. It's dog friendly. They've got kind of a dog run area out back. It's kid friendly too. Even though it is a tap room and brewery, I brought my 3-month-old last time. So it is kid-friendly place. It's pretty cool. Come hang out.
Getting his first bar experience early.
Yeah, man. Check that one off the list real quick.
Yep. So we'll see you back here on Thursday night for our regular show. Working on some fun things. So get ready to tune in on Thursday. And until then, we'll see you guys next time.